if you guys pay attention to us on Twitter, I went on the Spurs Up show and kind of previewed Clemson season. So my opinions haven't really changed in the last 2 weeks. So I'll kind of just reiterate kind of what I said on that episode, if that's all right with you guys. You can't tell
Works for
me
me.
until the comments happen, so I'm gonna do it anyway. Pretty much the biggest thing I think Clemson needs this year is playmakers to step up on offense. And looking at three receivers in particularly, Bo Collins, Adam Randall, and Cole Turner. Um, I honestly don't think Cole Turner, or I didn't have expectations for Cole Turner, but then he had that great game in the ACC championship game, and he's been getting a lot of hype. I've been seeing clips of him throughout the offseason and camp making plays against our DBs. Like, Cole Turner can step up and be that guy this year. Don't be surprised if he is. I'm really looking at those three, though. Uh, Continuing on offense, Jake Brenning
Cool.
Stool, and the middle of the field are going to be open all year long. I don't know if anybody else noticed in the spring game, but the very first offensive play call of the spring game was a pass to the tight end across the middle, and we kind of got popped for it. Whoever caught the ball, it might have been Burning Stool, got hit really hard by a linebacker on that play, and that's why you don't always throw across the middle. But I think both of those things are going to be taken advantage of very much this year. As a fan, you should never have confidence in Clemson's offensive line. Um, then they can never let you down. So as far as
Set the
offense,
bar low.
yeah, exactly. As far as offense goes, that's kind of my three main points going into the season that I'm looking at is like we have a lot of experience and some more age coming up, but we just really need those few people to step up and be the guys.
Yeah, I'm excited with Riley's offense of getting the tight ends involved more. And Burning Stool is an absolute specimen. When I was at the ACC championship game, was coming out of the tunnel, and he came walking by. I mean, I knew he was tall, but I was like looking up at him. I felt like I needed to address him as sir. Like, I'm so excited to
You're
see
probably
him
like
get
eight
involved.
years older than him too.
Oh yeah, probably more than that. But I'm really excited about that. My thoughts on this season. I haven't given a lot of thought on the season as a whole. As a whole, though, schedule does benefit Clemson this season with how and where you're having a lot of your key games this season. Having Florida State at home, having Notre Dame at home. You do go on the road to South Carolina, which after losing at home to South Carolina last season, uh, especially if they hit that over like I'm counting on them to do for the Pick'em contest, I think that's going to be a raucous, tough environment, and it's going to be a tough game. But I would not doubt Dabo Sweeney and the revenge factor because he does not like losing, and especially does not like losing to the Gamecocks. So the schedule works out really, really well for the Tigers as a whole. But I've really focused a lot on these first four games because you're going to get some tests early. Uh, Duke is getting a lot of hype with their quarterback there. You're starting on the road against Duke to open the season. You got a short week, granted. The next two opponents are not. Those are the two opponents you want to have when you're on a short week. But um, then week four, number eight, Florida State comes to town, and depending on how they perform against LSU in week one, um, that could be a huge matchup in Death Valley. Now, if they go and lay an egg in week one, the luster is a little lost, but I don't. Regardless of if Florida State loses that first game, they're going to play Clemson tough, and it's going to be a huge matchup. So, and I'm interested to see, and we've had some big games early over the last few years, opening the season against Georgia, Auburn a few years back. Um, but I feel like we need to give our yearly reminder that Dabo and company, they don't open up the playbook really. You as a fan are probably going to be a little frustrated with what you're seeing on the field, but just be patient. I feel like since once week four turn comes around, you're going to see quite a few things that you didn't see 1 through 3. I did some research with the first 4 games. Um, in the college football playoff era, the Tigers are 30-2. The first third of the season, those 2 losses came in 2021. That Georgia game where they opened up the season in Charlotte and against NC State. Talking about those first 4 games of the season, got a trivia question for you, Matthew. First trivia question of the second season, if I can get my thing highlighted. All right, since 1980, Clemson has lost to this team 8 times within the first 4 games of the season.
Wow, that is quite a question. Hmm. I honestly don't know. My first guess is to go for is not Georgia. We haven't played them that many times since 1980, but we probably have lost to them close to 8 times. um, I don't know. Is it a conference opponent? Can I ask for a hint?
It's not a conference opponent.
Not a conference opponent. Okay, I'll just stick with Georgia. I'll stay with Georgia.
It's Georgia.
Okay, I didn't know we played them
So
that much.
yeah, especially in the 80s and early 2000s. So Georgia, within the first 4 games of the season, Clemson in 80, 82, 84, 85, 02, 03, 14, and 21. Um, Note the Tigers open the season with Georgia next year at Mercedes-Benz. So um, I don't know what came upon me that the other day I was just obsessed with the first 4 games, and I sat there and researched the first 4 games of every season dating back to 2015. And something that kind of struck me, all the success the Tigers had with Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, winning national titles, there was a lot of frustration within the fan base the last couple of years, last year in particular, with the offense, play calling, offensive coordinator, that kind of thing. 2022, since last season, Tigers scored the most points they have through 4 games, dating back to my research in 2015. They scored 175 points last season through the first 4 games. Now, their point differential was extremely low, the third lowest in that time. They had a point differential of only 88 points last season. Um, but in that time, like I said, Tigers are 30-2. This is Tigers do a pretty good job. We always get these cupcake games that are frustrating as fans. You pay all this money to IPTAY and for tickets, and you're getting Charleston Southern and Florida Atlantic. But aside from that, you typically get some SEC opponent plus South Carolina, and that's usually early in the season. So taking advantage of that um, has worked in the Tigers' favor. I feel like I'm rambling now. I'm looking at this graph that I made on our note sheet, and I'm like, what was my thought process 4 days ago
No,
when
I
I
think
wrote these notes out?
it is pretty interesting. One of the most interesting things that I noticed from it was our worst point differential in the first 4 games came under Tony Elliott, not Brandon Streeter,
Yes.
which goes back to that 2021 season with the loss to Georgia in the first game, and then the loss to NC State a few weeks after. So it does make a little sense, but looking at this graph, maybe we should put a screenshot of this out on Twitter just so people can put their own
Yeah.
opinions out on there, because it is pretty interesting just looking at point differential with the Elliott and Scott combination. Clemson's offense was humming.
Oh,
You
yeah.
also got to think about back at the time what type of talent we had in 2019. Like, is a lot different than this current team. No offense.
Yeah. You gotta balance out the fact that you had 2 generational quarterbacks. But to your point about 2021, you have the worst point differential, only scoring 87 points through 4 games. Turning that around the next season with a first year as a coordinator in Brandon Streeter, who's no longer with the program, to score the most points through 4 games. So as frustrating as last season was, it was kind of interesting when I went back and looked and realized that how many points scored early on, and that kind of reminded me early on. DJ was kind of in his stride. We thought
Yeah.
he had changed his ways, and he was playing really, really well. The Georgia Tech game was a little sloppy, but it was his first game of the season. Um, but yeah, we'll definitely put this graph out there. I found it kind of interesting. I don't even
Oh
remember what
yeah.
triggered me to start doing all this research.
It is very interesting. I mean, I guess the point differential in the first four games for Brandon Streeter. The only thing I can think of is our first four games last year were not as hard as probably our first four games for 3 or 4 years before that, at least.
Yeah,
Because we would at least have Georgia in there for a few of those years and a few other tough opponents to start off. But like you were saying, Brandon Streeter and the offense was moving very well. I remember being very impressed after the Georgia Tech game with how DJ played, and I think DJ is still talented. I'm not gonna be shy about it. We just found out today, as of recording this, that DJ was named starter at Oregon State. So good luck to DJ out there. I think he's still talented. I don't think it's his fault of what happened, how his career went down at Clemson. That's a side
yeah.
note, but kind of included in
I,
this.
I I think it was a combination of a lot of things. So looking forward to watching him from afar. It'll be interesting to see him in a new system, new place, probably new headspace. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a big year. He's not gonna for a Heisman, I don't think, but I'm
No.
excited to watch him
I
this year.
DJ does probably have the opportunity, similar to XT, to work his way up into first round draft conversation. Because if you remember, DJ coming into year two after only starting the Boston College and Notre Dame game the previous year, he was in the Heisman conversation coming up in first round NFL draft. He has all the intangibles. It's just got to get put together, and he was not put in a great situation at Clemson, so it's not his fault. So
Um, but the pages turn. It's Kate Klubnik's job this season. Um, I don't know. Do you feel like people are putting a lot of eggs in their basket, a lot of pressure? Cade, what are your expectations for Cade this year?
I mean, yeah, sure, people are putting a lot of expectations on Cade, but that same thing happened with DJ. It's just kind of the nature of the beast being a top team in college football, where you had two generational quarterbacks come through with only 1 year in between them. You almost get used to that. Cade has that though. I think Cade was winning state championships in Texas in high school as like a sophomore, so he has it in him too. We'll just have to see coming into the season. Did you have anything to go on about the defense this year?
Um, I honestly focus all on offense. I'm excited as usual for our defense. I think they're going to take a step forward this year. I think the biggest thing is who's gonna give you that presence on the end there to get some pressure around the edge. But with our linebacker core, I'm excited to see Nate Wiggins, especially after the game he had in the ACC championship. Excited to watch him best as another year in here, and then also um, Wes Goodwin year two as defensive coordinator. Um, I have expectations that this team is going to take, or this unit at least is going to take a step forward. The defense at Clemson is always.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that the defense is going to be the strength this year. I'm really excited for what Wes Goodwin is going to do in year two. Um, I mean, based off of his year one performance as coordinator, it's about as good as you can go, I think, for what they were labeling as like a savant, somebody coming in, no coordinator experience, learning from Brent Venables. And overall, I think we schemed last season pretty well. Obviously, we gave up a lot more than we had under Venables points wise, but I think it's just an experience thing for Wes Goodwin. But you are true. You are correct in saying the defense is going to be the strength. Our interior defensive line, defensive tackles are nasty. They are going to be the strength. And like you said, with XT stepping up, and we've talked about it throughout the episode, but surprisingly, edge is maybe our biggest defensive weakness this year. And that's not something Clemson fans are used to saying going into the year. I mean, think of since 2013, I could tell you every edge rusher we've had probably since then. And we don't necessarily have that big name coming into the season, so we're going to need some people to step up on that. But like you said with Nate Wiggins, our DBs, I'm excited for our DBs. I love some good DB play. I think it's the hardest position to play in football is good coverage and playing corner slash safety. Um, but we were young last year and a lot of injuries, but we developed depth and we have experience this year. So I think that combined with the talent we have is going to be huge. I'm really excited to watch the secondary this year. It's a no-fly zone in Clemson secondary. Um, and other than that, special teams, we need somebody to step up. Kicking and
We've been
returning.
spoiled.
We have been spoiled. BT
We've been
Potter has been here forever, and he was amazing. I remember watching BT Potter high school highlights before he came to Clemson. Like, I remember those days, watching him hit like 50, 60-yard field goals in high school. Like, we are going to miss that, and it might cost us some games if I'm being honest. It's happened to Alabama a lot in the past. Special teams is a third of the game, and it's not something to overlook.
absolutely. Whoever takes over that role, they have big shoes to fill. Going back to you discussing our DBs and no fly zone, paint a picture for you right here. Clemson is 3-0. They off a win against LSU to open the season. Also comes in 3-0 Death Valley. Game day, kickoff, Death Valley rocking. Cannot wait for that.
I hope that that FSU wins, not LSU. I hope FSU wins because that's kind of like similar to we had a game last year. I guess it was NC State came into town undefeated, top five or top 10 at least,
Mm-hmm.
and Clemson was top five. Like that type of atmosphere is something that we need. Clemson's been spoiled the last few years until the South Carolina game, going like almost 50 games at home, winning in a row. If last year felt like I forgot what it felt like to lose at home, like to go
It's
home
been a
from
while
Clemson
since,
after a loss. Like, what does that feel like?
yeah, it has been a very long time since Tiger fans have filed out of Death Valley defeated. So the streak will start again, hopefully in a couple weeks. So
Well, it will
um,
definitely against Charleston Southern.
Dabo won't have them looking past Charleston Southern. That's the biggest game of the year that week.